Hello everyone, reporting today for First Updates Now, I'm Abhas, and with me here today is Team 15413, the Toaster Medics from Utah. They had a fantastic run recently at the Chicago Robotics Invitational, going 9-1 in 10 qualification matches, earning them the number one spot after qualifications. Now, they just have an absolutely fantastic power play robot, really long but controllable arm, very fast slides, a thin drivetrain, just everything you're looking for in a top robot. So I can't wait to jump into this and more coming up on First Updates Now.
This video on First Updates Now is made possible by viewers like you and also the following sponsors. SolidWorks is free for first teams. Over 80% of US engineering schools and 370,000 plus companies use SolidWorks to design great products. Head on over to solidworks.com/sponsorships to choose from desktop, cloud apps, or both to design your robot. Fun is continuing to grow and looking for new ad partners for the 2024 season. If your organization has a positive message to spread to our over 250,000 unique viewers, go to firstupdatesnow.com/contact to get more information.
Why don't we get started with your drivetrain? Really solid start to your robot. We definitely want to talk about that arm, but there's a lot of important things to cover in your drive base as well. So please get us started.
So at the beginning of the year, we designed our robot specifically with mobility in mind. We have a very narrow chassis base. It is 2.5 inches wide. We also have enough ground clearance here to be able to drive completely over ground junctions without hitting anything. So that's all fairly standard. We got standard mechanism drive. We have a 2-wheel odometry system. It is retractable partially so we don't damage it on ground junctions, and then it also retracts in teleop because we're not using it and we really don't want to damage it.
Yeah, and that polycarbonate odometry plates really just look fantastic. But please continue.
At the back of our robot right here, we have what we call the wheelie bar. We use it in autonomous to keep our robot from moving. So if you've seen our autonomous, we just stay parked in the same place the entire time while the arm rotates above us. But the arm is exerting quite a bit of force with all of its rotational energy, which makes it, without this it moves, which messes up a lot of stuff, especially before we had odometry. So this way, when we put the wheelie bar down, the back two wheels are suspended in the air and it's only resting on the front two. So it just helps us not move as much.
Yeah, of course. And so was this wheelie bar something you guys had implemented from day one, or was this a change you realized you needed to make in the season?
So about a week before states, we were having a lot of difficulties with our robot moving a lot during autonomous, and we decided that something similar to the wheelie bar would be the best way to fix that. We originally started with just a plate that was low enough to hit the ground so that when we moved, it would take it and hold in position. And then later we moved to an actively powered wheelie bar just so we had a little bit more control.
Yeah, awesome. And so now jumping into your arm, that's really what everybody wants to hear about. Let's just get started with how the idea for it came about, right? Was this something you guys had envisioned from day one as soon as POWERPLAY was released, or did it really change throughout the season?
Yeah. So early on in the season, we were trying to figure out how to stack the cones in autonomous, and we did some Pythagorean theorem and realized the diagonal distance inside the frame was just a little bit over half the distance between the stack of 5 cones and the nearest high junction. So with this, we realized, okay, an arm that stows diagonally inside the robot would be long enough that if it flips back and forth, we'll be able to stack the cones very simply. So it's just a matter of adding a tower to hold the arm up, and yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is a very FRC-esque design, if you will. I don't think we really see many FTC teams attempting such a large moving structure. So did that influence you? Did you guys have FRC experience that influenced your decision to implement such a system, or was it really just you were confident in your ability to pull this off?
So I was very inspired by the behind the bot of the 254's 2019 design. With the angled arm there that was able to do the back and forth motion by using both the tower and arm. So very excited to try out something like that. So
yeah.
Inverse can there too.
Awesome. Yeah. So before we jump into the software, let's just go through each step of the arm, starting from the intake and the claw on the front. So walk us through it, please. Exactly how it works. If there's any changes you guys have made throughout the season, and go ahead.
So at the beginning of the season, we started out with a roller intake. But soon we realized after a few competitions that this was inefficient since it pulled away the 5-stack from its place in autonomous, and that caused penalties, and it was also inaccurate, making our autonomous unreliable. So then, near CRI, we switched to the claw, which is more accurate and made it so that we had a more reliable autonomous.
Yeah, and so, with this claw, are there any sensors you guys have added to it to, facilitate that automated code pickup, or really are your drivers, do they have enough practice?
We don't have any sensors really. It's basically mostly just the drivers picking it up when they want.
Yeah, got it. And so I do see you guys have some sort of junction alignment device up there. So, how exactly does it work? Did you guys have that since day one, or was that a new addition?
This is the alignment bar, and this was added fairly early into the season. We use this so that in autonomous and teleop, we pull the pole inwards, so it's easier for us to score. Before, when we had the roller intake, this would really help us align with it and score the cone. And we can use it to get really far poles in autonomous, so we can get the high junction more easily.
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, the next thing I want to jump into is your guys' chain. I see you guys have chain running the entire length of your arm. So let's talk about that a little bit, exactly what its purpose is. And, please go ahead.
Right. So this chain, it comes from the tower, and what this chain allows us to do is it allows us to take this claw here and kind of just angle it a little bit, and yep. Oh, sorry. You're good. You can kind of see it. You can kind of see it there, where like it kind of angles upwards, and this allows us to have a little bit more control of where we're going to be placing the cones and stuff. So that way, when we're going on like low junctions or mid junctions, we can kind of place it without having to mess it up.
So it's an active angle adjustment system. It's not just a passive virtual 4-bar. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like digital 4-bar.
Yeah. And so the next question I have regarding that, I see you guys have some rubber bands running around the middle of that chain length. So can you talk about that? Is that your tensioning system, and how has that worked out?
This is actually the brand name Dyneema cable here. And then this is zip ties. It is used for tensioning our chain. I'm assuming we didn't have enough chain to do all of this, so we had to extend a little bit and then zip tie.
I see. Okay, and yeah, so now talking about your arm a little bit, exactly how long is it, what is it made out of, and then we'll go into the gearbox.
So the arm is made of two 6061 aluminum tubes. They're 1 inch by 1/2 inch. And they're both connected together in the middle with a go tube running on a 8-rex dead axle through the middle, through the tower. And then in addition, it has this kind of H-plate type design that helps give a little bit more stiffness and keep both those sides parallel.
Yeah, and can we see that go tube part and the gearbox just a little bit closer? I think that'd be really great. Yeah, no, looks absolutely fantastic. So how have you guys mitigated any potential problems you've had, with just sprockets shearing or chain breaking or axles twisting, anything that comes with the risk of a very long, very fast arm?
So in order to keep the gearboxes from breaking, the trick really is to minimize the actual torque on the gearbox itself. So we have the chain here, and there's a 2.4 to 1 reduction before it ever touches the gearbox. So any impacts here are already deadened and dampened by the chain before it touches the gearbox, and also reduced.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fantastic. And so now, talking about just how the entire system's powered and what sensors you have going on there, can you walk us through that? How many motors and servos, and if you have any external encoders, internal encoders, all of that good stuff.
So for Drivetrain, there's 4 motors, 16:1 ratio. And then we also have the tower here. There's not very much space between these 2 tower motors. So we have to be very, very creative with the way we mount them. We're not actually mounting on the faceplate, we're actually mounting slightly past the faceplate. So you have to give us a little bit of extra space to make it work with the thinner chassis.
I see.
And then in addition to that, we have, of course, the 1 arm motor up top here inside the channel that holds both sides together. And then the biggest thing, sensor-wise, is the on-axis encoder here. We used to use the encoder on the back of the motor. That ran into really big resolution problems. With the arm this long, even the high resolution of the encoder plus all the gearboxes really just wasn't enough. Plus the backups to the gearboxes. So by having this encoder directly on the axis with 8,000 pulses, we're able to get really high resolution, and any backlash in the ARM gearbox doesn't matter because it's all accounted for by direct driving the encoder.
Yeah, of course. And so, now let's step a little bit into the software, of your entire ARM. So first, we'll start with just generally controlling the whole system. You mentioned the high resolution of the encoder. So how do you use that information to control your ARM in autonomous and teleop?
So that's all just, of course, we have like the set points all over the place for anywhere we could possibly want to go. But we feed in so when we code set points, we code it as an XY coordinate that we want the arm to be in, and that feeds into our inverse kinematics algorithm, which controlling the actual end target of the arm and the necessary arm and tower angle to achieve any endpoint. So if in autonomous we're coding autonomous, it looks a little bit too high. We just, instead of figuring out what that accounts for in pulses, we just say, okay, it needs to be 5 millimeters lower. We change the Y value by 5 millimeters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so now talking about your lift or your tower, as you guys call it, walk us through the hardware behind that, and then we'll talk a little bit about how it's used throughout the match.
So our tower is our own kind of custom solution. It's MGN9 rails. It's MGN9 rails plus 2 blocks per stage. But the thing is with the MGN9s is the actual the interface of the bearing to the rail is really, really stiff. But the rail itself isn't that stiff since it just doesn't have that much cross section. So we add these custom machined aluminum C channels on the back of them that really give a lot of stiffness to the rail itself, so that we can use the full strength of the blocks that ride on them.
Yeah, and I see those some constant torque springs running the length of the slides, or is it something else?
So these are constant force springs, and these are so the arm doesn't have to use as much energy to keep the arm up. So these constant force springs make it so that it has less weight on the arm and doesn't overheat the motors as much.
Yeah, of course. And I think the last thing I want to touch on robot-wise is your guys' wiring. Very, very complicated to make sure it runs as smoothly as it does. I see you guys have some sort of scissor lift mechanism. Can you walk us through that exactly?
Well, so our scissor lift, it's quite different because we need to be able to kind of get it in there, but also not fit as you can see here, it needs to be able to fit here, but when it stretches out, it needs to be able to reach all the way up. And a way we got around that without having to have this part be kind of weaker is by having it kind of be able to rotate over here. That allows us to be able to rotate this kind of slowly rotate it as our tower moves up and down, and that allows us to have a stronger scissor lift without having to kind of weaken and kind of be able to have the base be able to bend because the entire thing bends.
Sure. And so with your scissor lift and this wiring, was this done all in CAD before you had tested any of the wiring, or was this all more free built?
We've had multiple iterations. Of the wiring, we used to have a cable or a badge extender cable coming down in here, and then we had a coil of wires that would fall in here. But just because the raw volume of wires, we really need something to much more control it. Because if you just let it fall wherever it wants to, it's just so much volume, right, that it would just spill. It spills everywhere. So then we had to CAD up the solution and implement the scissor lift. It's able to tuck all the wires inside this super compact block.
And so what exactly are the bars of the scissor lift mechanism made of in your case?
They're a custom machined Home Depot aluminum angle. I see.
Yeah, and another question I have for you guys regarding that is you keep talking about all these things you guys have custom machines. So what machining capabilities do you guys exactly have at your disposal? Because I think our teams around the world will really find that interesting.
So it's all just CNC router for all the aluminum plates and all the polycarbonate plates. And then to do all the things like the slides, all the slides were done on a manual milling machine.
I see.
And plus the Dremel.
Yeah. Cool. And so I guess my last question for you guys, before we wrap up this interview, is regarding just game strategy, specifically at CRI. So, CRI is always famous for releasing a slight variation of the rules each year, a new twist here or there, as well as the 3v3 format in the larger game field. So going into CRI, how did you guys approach these changes? What exactly was your game plan, and how did it work out?
So originally, you might have seen at the very beginning of the season, we were cycling. Then as the season went on and people could score more cones, we switched to supremacy. And we decided that would be really important with Chicago just because there were so many junctions there. Just cycling on one, there also wasn't a junction close enough to cycle on. So being able to cover all of our supremacy points was really important for us.
The other thing was just get the auto to just work every single time. Now that there was no interference with nearby opponents trying to score the same pole as you, it was just really important that we just made every single auto cone, never really missed anything.
Yeah, of course. So, Toaster Medics, thank you so much. There is really a lot to take away from this interview. I know teams are just going to love watching this. There's so much to learn. Thank you so much for this fantastic interview. You guys have had an incredible run this season. Really, really fast. Great power play bot. So, thank you so much. Reporting for First Updates Now, I'm Abbas, and this is Team 15413, the Toaster Medics.
This video on First Updates Now is made possible by viewers like you and also the following sponsors. SOLIDWORKS is free for first teams. Over 80% of US engineering schools and 370,000 plus companies use SOLIDWORKS to design great products. SOLIDWORKS can help you design a great robot on desktop or on the cloud. Go to solidworks.com/first to register your team. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to stay up to date on our new videos. Keep the conversation going and provide your input to our content. Watch our live shows at twitch.tv/firstupdatesnow. Join our Discord at discord.gg/firstupdatesnow and check out Fun FTC on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and First Updates Now on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter.